Let's go, lesbians. Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk to Tom, the show where I talk about any cartoon I feel like talking about, and of course, I feel like talking about She-Ra Season 2, because my name is Tom, and this is my show. Now, if you were not clued in before, this is in fact a half season, so instead of 13 episodes, we got 7. That way we'll get 6 really soon, probably in the summer. Probably like July. That's my estimate. We're gonna get more She-Ra and the Princesses of Power sooner, and that's the idea. That's the whole idea. If you were not aware. Honestly, I'm happy about this. I'm happy. I'm happy to be able to talk about this show more. I'm able to see more discussion about it, because I love the amount of discussion that this show inspires out of people. However, the seasons are still produced as 13 episodes, meaning Season 2 and Season 3 were produced together as one season. As a result, the story arc is going to cut off and leave us on a cliffhanger before we get to see the rest of the story. So I want to focus on how well this is actually executed, along with giving my thoughts on the actual season, because I assume y'all care about my opinion. But I want to focus on this because I'm slightly skeptical, based on the fact that this was a distribution decision and not a creative one. It wasn't the writers who were like, yo, we should have half seasons. It was Dreamworks, it was the people who were deciding how they were going to schedule all this stuff out. They were like, yo, it might work out better if we do half seasons. So they weren't sitting there writing that with this in mind. They will moving forward, but for this season, not. They were writing it with the idea of, okay, this is a 13 episode arc. And honestly, I feel like for most Netflix shows, 13 episodes is too long for a story arc, because a lot of times they don't propose plot points in the beginning of the season that have enough mileage to get you through 13 episodes. So usually around like 5 episodes, give or take, they start to realize, oh crap, this plot point has run its course, now we gotta do something, probably something crazy, maybe even stupid, to keep the story moving so we can get to the end of the season. That's how you get Luke Cage's superpowers getting retconned and then re-retconned because it was dumb. I don't get to see my favorite Marvel hero in the MCU for this. This is what I get instead? Shame. Shameful. And in She-Ra Season 1, I kind of feel like they suffered from this a little bit, where they had the plot point of, we're gonna get these princesses together into a group, and then once that whole arc ran its course, they had to figure out something else. But I feel like they executed it pretty well, considering. There were a couple of episodes where it was kind of slow and they had to build something up to the finale, but overall I feel like it handled it a lot better than most shows on Netflix handle that dilemma of, oh crap, we got more show to fill. So in the case of Season 2, the question is, with 6 episodes, with it cutting off right in the middle, is this jarring? Does it make sense? Does it feel like we're at a cliffhanger where we want to see what happens next, or is it just cutting off really weird and abruptly? My question overall is, does the pacing suffer? My stance on this is I think that the half seasons actually helped the pacing. I feel like I had a better experience just consuming these 6 episodes, the way that they are, than I would have if they dropped all of it on me. And the thing is I might not be saying this if I didn't know that we're gonna get Season 3 in the near future. If I didn't feel like there was a reasonable time frame between now and when we're getting more episodes, I might feel differently, but I have the confidence that we're not going to be waiting too long before we see more. So let's get into how the pacing and everything and all this stuff played out. So honestly, I thought the first episode was pretty slow. I'm not a big fan of that one. Not a big fan of that one. But after that, they managed to keep me engaged up until the end. And here are a few ways that they did that. First, by building on the groundwork they set from Season 1. They elaborated on Entrapta's relationship to the Horde and all the seeds planted from that, how that affects the rebellion, how it affects Bow and Glimmer personally, how it affects all the princesses personally. Well, actually, they didn't go through them like all one by one. I was pretty much right about the assumption I've been making about Entrapta this whole time post Season 1, and that's that Entrapta isn't picking a side, and she's just taking any and every opportunity to build new and better tech.
I'm on the side of science! But the Horde is supplying me with tools and materials for my work, so...
She has no loyalty or allegiance to either side. Her heart belongs to science, and science alone. And it's also more blatant now that Catra has been manipulating Entrapta in little ways to keep her with the Horde. Then there's the episode Roll With It, which is a whole lot of fan service, because you got OCs, a very obvious parallel to D&D, a callback scene to the original She-Ra, and a lot of really fun character moments. And this was also one of the episodes where I noticed I feel like they're putting a bit more care and effort and just getting more creative with the action. Maybe it was always that good and I just took it for granted, but I feel like there's been an improvement from Season 1 to Season 2 in how they're directing and just visualizing everything that happens in the battlefield, which is great. You know, it's always great to see things improve. Now, if only they could get rid of the whole disappearance disappearing sword thing. That lack of continuity just really, it's driving me crazy. Then after that episode, for the rest of the season, they really start digging down deep to develop the characters and really show more of them. Most notably, we get an episode where the teams kind of get mixed up, and we got characters from both sides that we haven't seen interact too much before have like really deep character moments, which is a formula that I really like, and a thing that I know at Noelle Stevenson said that she really wants to do with this series, so I'm not surprised that this happened, but I'm happy with it. Specifically, I loved Seahawk's heart-to-heart with Scorpia, where they're talking about feeling unappreciated, invalidated. Scorpia talks about wanting to form a better bond with people, specifically Catra, because we get all those little allusions to, zuba-dooba-dooba, zuba-dooba, zuba-dooba. You know what I mean. And honestly, that whole scene hit really close to home for me. It's like, I've been there. I've done that. I've had that conversation right down to a drunk friend who's barely paying attention, telling us how great we are because we're sad. And they're a good friend, and they want us to feel good about ourselves.
Aww, you guys are my best friends.
This is one of a few really big moments of development that Scorpia gets this season. And it's also not the only big character development we get, because this is She-Ra, the Princesses of Power, and they love developing characters because it's a character-driven show. We get the whole story of how Lightspinner evolved into Shadow Weaver. And this was a story that I was glued to my screen for. And I love the fact that they incorporated Micah, which is, for those of you who do not know or didn't get the reference, that is Glimmer's dad. And I love that because it draws like a connection between the two sides, makes things more personal down the line. It's all good stuff to me. And we also get to see that Shadow Weaver really was more of a maternal figure than anything else for both Catra and Adora. She was kind of a toxic mother figure, but she was still a mother figure before anything else. And it's not surprising that in that same episode, we see that Catra is actually really emotionally attached to Shadow Weaver, despite all of their issues, and in the end, that would come back to bite Catra in the butt, because Shadow Weaver would exploit that attachment in order to escape from her prison cell, which people are drawing a lot of conclusions from this, and I don't necessarily think they're wrong, but I feel like there's a bit more nuance there. People are saying, oh, Shadow Weaver is just an awful person who manipulated Catra, which she did, but I feel like there's a bit more going on there. I feel like some of the things from their heart-to-heart interaction weren't necessarily Shadow Weaver lying to get what she wants. I feel like there might be some truth there, and there might be some dimension to the situation, and I feel like we're going to learn more about that next season, and we're going to get some clarification based on how Shadow Weaver approaches Adora, based on how that interaction goes. It'll tell us a lot about whether or not Shadow Weaver was just manipulating Catra, or there's some actual truth to what she was saying. And our key point to touch on is the fact that Catra is now seeing just how difficult Shadow Weaver's job was, and just how difficult it is to stay on the good side of Horde. And I know I've said before that I have trouble seeing Catra joining the good guys, or betraying the Horde. But this could be something that could trigger that. Their whole dynamic makes that possibility a bit more believable for me. Although there's also a possibility that Catra could be like Hordak, more like Hodak, cause you a hoe, and then she takes over the Horde, and then she becomes the undisputed top baddie, which I would honestly prefer, for reasons that I talked about in my other video, where I talked about the connection between Catra and Adora and So that brings us to the last big beefy episode, where I'm glad that even though this is a half season, even though they cut it off, I feel like this was a great episode to end on. It was probably the best episode of this season, which is good, end on the highest note that you possibly can. And a big reason this episode was so good was because we finally got to see Bo's dads, which we have been waiting for since before the show even started. This was a confirmed part of the universe ever since the New York Comic Con panel this past year, before season 1 even premiered. Part of me kind of wonders about the blood relation between Bo and his dads, though. Is he adopted? Is he a surrogate? If so, which dad is he biologically related to? Because he has physical and social traits and features of both of them. Maybe there's a possibility that in this universe, two dudes can reproduce. And before you say that's not possible, you're being ridiculous, we're talking about a show where a teenage girl grabs a sword, says some magic words, and turns into an Amazonian space princess. You're telling me in that same universe, two dudes reproducing is just completely unimaginable. That's just off the table entirely? I don't think so. But the great thing about this episode and this whole story going on, there's a lot of irony and juxtaposition going on to the dynamic between Bo and his dads. Because Bo has been lying to his dad, saying that he's off at an academy, learning to be a historian. That way he can follow in their footsteps, because they're both historians. And they also happen to be conscientious objectors to the whole war between the Horde and the Rebellion. And the last thing that they would want is to learn that their son is friends with princesses, and he's a soldier. There's a lot of coding here that replicates the story of like a kid who is gay or trans hiding that from their parents, which is ironic that he's hiding that from his two dads. This is like the type of well thought out situation that makes for just a really interesting story, and that's exactly what this is. And even if you can't relate to the whole like LGBT aspect of that, there's also the fact that Bo's dads think, oh, you know, our Bo, he's so shy and introverted, you know, he just likes to keep to himself, when in reality, us, like the viewers, and Bo's friends Adora and Glimmer, we all know, like, Bo is a very outgoing, talkative person, which is something that I feel like a lot of people in general can relate to. Because a lot of us, no matter how supportive or accepting our parents are of us, sometimes we feel like we can't necessarily be ourselves around them, and that results in us being a lot more reserved around our parents than we are around our friends. Let's talk about that for a second. Not only did they put in the metaphor, like, specifically for a certain group of people to relate to and be able to connect with, but they also put something in there so just the average person can connect with that. Like, they really broadened out this whole story so as many people as possible could latch onto the story. Like, that's pretty dope. And in the end, Bo's dads, of course, find out that he's a soldier, and they're like, you know, son, we love you anyways. The only thing we're upset about is the fact that we made you feel like you had to lie to us. And it's like, that's the type of thing that hits you right in the feels, man. Unless you just don't got feels, in which case, I feel sorry for you. Then the episode ends showing Shadow Weaver standing menacingly over Adora's bed while she sleeps. And that cuts off right there. That's the shot it ends on. It ends on a cliffhanger. They succeeded. They succeeded in the fact that I want to see what happens next. I'm excited for the next batch of episodes, and I know, based on the way they've normally paced these things out, the next season is going to be really just intense. It's gonna go hard. So in conclusion, I feel like this whole 6 to 7 episode structure is really good, because with this season, we had the build up, and that sets up for next season. And by the time that comes around, I'm going to be excited, you're gonna be excited, everyone's gonna be excited to just see what happens. And with a show that's designed for people to just binge through, I feel like that's probably the ideal viewing experience. Of course, this is all just my preference, and I know my preference. I enjoy this, but I want to know what you guys think. I want to know what everybody else thinks. Do you guys feel like this makes the viewing experience better? Is it worth having fewer episodes a season to get more episodes more often? Let me know in the comments below, or you can find me at TommyPQM on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. That's all I gotta say. Roll the outro. Thank you for watching Let's Talk with Tom on the Roundtable, but Tom isn't just on the Roundtable. I have my own self-titled personal channel. I have a Twitter, I have an Instagram, I have a Snapchat, I have all that good stuff. In fact, I even have a Tumblr. So, if you're interested in any of that, check that out, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!